Hello everyone, my name is Efrain, along with my group members Uriel, Osvaldo, Gonzalo, Alfonso, and Savannah. We will be presenting on the Harvard Business Review IdeaCast episode, What Leads Companies to Betray Their Own Principles, featuring entrepreneur and author Eric Ries. In this podcast, Reese discusses why companies that start with strong values and ethical principles sometimes move away from them when faced with pressure from competition, investors, or growth expectations. He explains that organizations often do not intentionally abandon their values. Instead, small decisions made under pressure can gradually shift them away from their original mission and purpose. This topic is important because a company's principles influence its leadership's culture, reputation, and long-term success. Businesses must consistently balance profitability with ethical responsibility, and those decisions can often affect employees, customers, investors, and other stakeholders. So in the rest of our presentation, we will analyze the podcast using strategic management concepts discussed in class, including SWOT analysis, core competencies, strategic partnerships, target markets, business models, leadership, and future challenges. With that overview in mind, I will now turn it over to the next presenter, who will begin our strategic analysis of the podcast.
Hi, I'm Uriel, and I will be going over the competitor analysis and SWOT analysis. For the competitor analysis, companies that maintain strong ethical principles often compete against firms that focus primarily on maximizing short-term profits. The podcast highlights how organizations can gain a competitive advantage by staying committed to their values, even when they do so may seem costly in the short run. Examples include companies such as Patagonia, Costco, and Trader Joe's. These organizations have built strong reputations by prioritizing customers, employees, and other stakeholders. Because consumers increasingly value transparency and corporate responsibility, these companies are often rewarded with stronger customer loyalty and greater trust. While competitors may be able to copy products or pricing strategies, it is much more difficult to replicate a company's culture, reputation, and long-term commitment to ethical behavior. For the SWOT analysis, some of the strengths are strong brand reputation. Companies that consistently follow their value develop credibility with customers, employees, and investors. This reputation can become a valuable competitive advantage over time. Another strength is customer loyalty. Consumers are more likely to support businesses they trust, especially with those businesses demonstrate integrity and consistency. Loyal customers are also more likely to recommend the company to others and remain customers even when competitors offer low prices. Third strength is employee commitment. Employees often feel more motivated and engaged when they believe their company operates accordingly to meaningful principles. This can lead to higher productivity, lower turnover, and stronger organizational culture. For the weaknesses, one weakness is a higher operating cost. Ethical sourcing, employee benefits, and sustainable business practices can require significant investments. These costs may sometimes place companies at a disadvantage compared to competitors focused solely on minimizing expenses. Another weakness is slow decision-making. Organizations that consider the impact of decisions on multiple stakeholders may take longer to act because they carefully evaluate both financial and ethical consequences. Opportunities. One opportunity is the growing demand for ethical businesses. Many consumers today actively seek out companies that align with their personal values, creating opportunities for growth and differentiation. Another opportunity comes from ESG investing trends, which emphasize environmental, social, and governance factors. Investors are increasingly directing capital towards organizations that demonstrate responsible business practices. Additionally, strong ethical principles can improve employer branding, helping companies attract talented employees who want to work for organizations with a clear purpose and positive reputation. Threats. One threat is competitive pressure. Companies that prioritize ethics may face competitors willing to cut corners or reduce costs in ways that create pricing advantages. The second threat is economic downturns. During difficult economic periods, customers and investors may focus more heavily on price and short-term financial performance than ethical considerations. Finally, there's shareholder pressure for short-term profits. Public companies may face demands from investors who prioritize immediate financial returns, potentially creating tension between long-term values and short-term performance goals. From a managerial insight perspective, the key managerial insight from the podcast is that organizations that consistently follow their principles often create sustainable competitive advantages that are difficult for competitors to imitate. While maintaining ethical standards may involve short-term costs and challenges, it can strengthen trust, loyalty, and long-term business success. In most cases, a company's values become one of its most valuable strategic assets.
Now I'm going to cover Costco's internal analysis, focusing on the company's resources and core competencies. The podcast explains that many companies start with a strong mission, but over time they can lose the mission because short-term financial pressure becomes more important than long-term value. Costco stands out because it has protected its mission through the way it operates. In this episode, Eric Rise uses Costco as an example of a company that chooses the harder path in order to keep customer trust. First, Costco's most important resources are its membership base. Kirkland signature brand, warehouse format, supplier relationships, employee culture, and brand reputation. The membership base is one of Costco's strongest resources because members pay before they even shop. This means Costco is not just selling products. Costco is selling access to trusted value. When people keep renewing their membership, it shows that they believe Costco is saving them money and treating them fairly. Another important resource is Kirkland Signature, Costco's private label brand. Kirkland matters because it gives Costco more control over quality and pricing. Customers trust Kirkland because they trust Costco. That is powerful because the private label usually has to prove itself. But Costco has built enough credibility that members are willing to try Kirkland products. Costco's warehouse format is also a major resource. The company keeps the shopping experience simple by using limited product selection, bulk selling, and high volume. This helps them keep operating costs low. Instead of trying to offer every possible item like Amazon or Walmart, Costco focuses on fewer products that they can sell quickly and create strong value for members. Now looking at core competencies. Costco's biggest core competency is not simply having low prices. Many companies can discount products. Costco's real core is turning customer trust into long-term loyalty. A strong example from the podcast is Costco's $1.50 hot dog and soda combo. Costco could raise the price and make more money in the short run, but it chooses not to because the price represents a promise to customers. The podcast explains this as the idea that harder is easier. The easy choice would be to raise prices. The harder choice is to figure out how to keep the promise while still operating efficiently. Another core competency is Costco's operational discipline. This company has to manage costs extremely well in order to keep prices low. Its limited product selection, supplier negotiations, bulk sales, efficient inventory movement, and employee culture all support the same strategy. The managerial insight is that Costco's internal advantage is not one single resource. It is a system. The warehouse model lowers costs. Lower costs support low prices build trust. Trust increases membership renewals. Membership renewals create stable revenue. That cycle is what makes Costco difficult for competitors to copy. So overall, Costco's internal strength comes from protecting trust as a business asset. Its resources and core competencies all connect back to the same idea. Keep the customer's trust even when short-term profits could be higher.
When it comes to gaining perfect or good strategic partnerships, you want to stray away from what this podcast said as it being strictly only on revenue and what is gained from the shareholders. You essentially want to just work for the customers and build your company that way rather than aiming for revenue, as this can stray away from your previous belief to what you actually guys are doing in the organization. A good example of a company that made this happen in the podcast was spoken about Costco, as they take money that is rightfully belongs to the shareholders, and instead of doing what other companies do and mess up the money, they reinvest into the customers to gain the trust of them so they can keep coming back and the revenue stays steady at that point. Now, again, like the word I said, trustworthiness, this is a key point in being able to grow your organization and to build partnerships, because having basically a transparent wall is always going to give you the benefit from your customers, shareholders, stakeholders, anyone who's part of your business, and from looking at it from the outside. It opens perfect windows and gives you good partnerships, because people would want to work with someone who is clear, concise, and who is upfront with everything. So this would make sense to have as much trustworthiness as you can in everyone in your business. Towards the end of the podcast, there was a talk about what is something that a company can implement that will benefit them instantly, or pretty much instantly, which would help them also gain a partnership. So this was to write the company mission statement in the corporate charter, which I described also as being where a lot of people claim their business in Delaware, as it's a pretty cheap state to do this in, and where most people do. It's only a 2-page paper where lawyers can write it up in a couple of days or in a couple hours, and you claim this. And in the writing, you are writing down your actual purpose of the company, which is called technically the public benefit. Now, the bad thing about what many people are doing is they have two sides of it. They say something but mean another thing in the back. They basically put this up as a front just to make their customers seem like they're going to do something, but in reality, their purpose is totally different. Now, this is not good for partnerships, as many people know this is not truthful. It basically has a lot of barriers that maybe the company goes through. Something else that you would need to think about to get a partnership that strategically helps you in your company is to basically have the same morals, the same ideas, to be on the same level as everyone in the company. An example of the podcast was given where the companies that had bad plan Bs, and one of them being Apple. As we see, when Steve Jobs passed and I believe Tim Cook took over, there's many things that happened differently. Costs were cut. Now, these people were awarded for cutting costs, but maybe it was not the right idea, in the sense of many people weren't shining a light on the consequences of what this happened. So I think having a strong partnership will have the ability to basically mitigate all the issues that happen when you try to do something good. So basically just weighing out your pros and cons, especially when it comes to a bigger corporation like that, where they're very set in stone and in a revolutionary arc in the technology space. An additional key part would be an oath, as spoken in the podcast, given by the board of directors and everyone who falls either above or below them, just to have a good sense of where they should be. And this plays a part in the partnership, as everyone will need to work together. There's not always like one set in stone perfect partner, but these are perfect ways to set it up and to have basically barriers where you can have not to exceed any limitations, to stay within your needs, and basically just run a good, smooth organization while also implementing the oath and keeping everything either just lastly, I would say is to have a clear understanding of where either you or your partnership stands, rather that if just because they have a title of, let's say, a director or a previous role as that, just to understand that if they've had any towards bias when it comes to revenue, if that's really what they've been chasing, or what type of model they've been chasing in their company, rather that be, like I said, the revenue, the money side, or customers, like one of them being Apple. As we see, when Steve Jobs passed and I believe Tim Cook took over, there's many things that happened differently. costs were cut. Now, these people were rewarded for cutting costs, but maybe it was not the right idea in the sense of many people weren't shining a light on the consequences of what has happened. So I think having a strong partnership will have the ability to basically mitigate all the issues that happen when you try to do something good. So basically just weighing out your pros and cons, especially when it comes to a bigger corporation like that, where they're very set in stone and in a revolutionary arc in the technology space. An additional key part would be an oath, as spoken in the podcast, given by the board of directors and everyone who falls either above or below them, just to have a good sense of where they should be. And this plays a part in the partnership, as everyone will need to work together. There's not always like one set-in-stone perfect partner, but these are perfect ways to set it up and to have basically barriers where you can have not to exceed any limitations, to stay within your needs, and basically.
The target market for the ideas presented in the podcast includes founders, executives, board members, and managers of growing organizations. Eric Ries argues that as companies scale, they often face pressure from investors, short-term financial goals, and bureaucratic systems that can cause them to drift away from the original mission. Because of this, his message is particularly relevant to startups transitioning into larger organizations, publicly traded companies, and businesses experiencing rapid growth. From a business model perspective, the podcast emphasizes that organizations should create value not only for shareholders, but also for customers, employees, and communities. Rise argues that many companies become too focused on short-term financial performance, which can damage trust, innovation, and long-term success. He uses companies like Costco as examples of businesses that prioritize customer value and mission alignment, even when doing so may reduce short-term profits. One important strategic takeaway is that companies' business model should support its mission rather than conflict with it. According to Rise, organizations that align their incentives, governance structures, and operational decisions with their core purpose are more likely to sustain trust, maintain competitive advantages, and achieve long-term success. This demonstrates how business models and target market strategies are closely connected to an organization's overall strategic direction.